Good evening, Brian. It's Thursday, and that means it's time for a Thursday Top 5. Now, today I wanted to throw it back a little bit old school. One of the videos I recorded before the first Thursday Top 5 that sort of led me to want to do something like a Thursday Top 5 was a bonus video I recorded on the weekend where I talked about podcasts. And so today I thought to sort of follow that same vein, I would talk about my top 5 favorite other podcasts. I mentioned a lot of podcasts in that video, so I'm not going to re-mention any of those ones. And these also maybe are not my personal favorite podcasts in order, but these are the ones that I think would be the podcasts I would most likely recommend to other people, and especially you. So I'm not going to mention any of those other ones. Consider this sort of like a part 2, and let's get started. The first one I'm talking about is called Criminal. It is produced by a woman here in North Carolina, and each episode focuses on a story of a crime that happened. Sometimes it tends to feel more like a true crime, like serial killer, thrillery podcast. Other times it's more of a historical story about a crime that happened and how it wasn't as bad as it could have been, or other things. So sometimes it's more history focused, sometimes it's more like creepy and scary focused, but I always get enjoyment out of listening to it, and it's definitely just fun to check out. So the next one I want to talk about is called Cortex. This is also on the Relay FM network, which I mentioned in my last video about podcasts. And it's by two hosts, Mike Hurley, who was one of the co-founders of the network and has a lot of podcasts, and the other is CGP Grey, the YouTuber. And both of them Mike now has a YouTube channel too, so they talk about YouTube, they talk about CGP Grey's animating, they talk about productivity and how they both get things done and the different ways they do that, but I really enjoy it. It's always a lot of fun to listen to, and I always like seeing it pop up in my feed, and I thought you might be interested too, both because CGP Grey does animated videos, and I know you're trying to get more into animating, and also because they talk, especially recently, a lot about YouTube, and we're both on YouTube. So that's a fun one. You should also check that one out. The next one I'll talk about is called Nocturne. This one is interesting. It's sort of got a creepy, spooky vibe to it, but it's not a scary podcast. But it's all about the nighttime and different perspectives on that. Things that happen at night, or people who work at night, and how that's different from working during the normal daylight hours when everyone else is awake. Just interesting things like that about the nighttime, but I find it both interesting and kind of calming to listen to. It's usually quiet, there's usually lots of nighttime sounds involved in the show, so it's definitely really fun and a really neat thing to check out, so I would definitely recommend it. Another one I think is really good is called Hidden Brain. This is an NPR podcast, and it takes a look at all of the different ways things that we don't tend to notice affect the way that we think about things, or affect the way that the world works, or exploring things on a deeper level. It definitely has a tendency to lean towards the brain and behavior and psychology and stuff like that, but it's definitely really neat, and I always learn interesting things from it, so it's definitely worth listening to. The last one I want to talk about in this Thursday Top 5, Brian, is a really funny, simple, silly one called Robot or Not. It is very short. Usually the episodes are 2 to 5 minutes long, in which the two hosts basically just take a character from TV shows or movies or comics or some kind of pop cultural character and debate as to whether or not that thing constitutes a robot. They've talked about the Daleks from Doctor Who, they've talked about characters from Star Trek and RoboCop and various things, and it's usually really silly and really funny, and definitely a good way to add a little bit of humor to your day, and it's not very long at all, so it's definitely worth adding to your podcast queue as well. So that's it for this Thursday Top 5, Brian. I hope that you found it interesting and entertaining, and hopefully you'll check out some of these podcasts, and if you do, I'd love to hear what you think about them, or if you have any other podcasts you want to mention, I'd love to hear about those too. Have a good night. I'll see you tomorrow.